Hello, 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 hello. How are you this evening? Thank you for joining me. My name is Brian K McNeill, aka Paul B. That's right, I'm a grandpa. And I'm also a sales coach and a professional speaker. And for the last 30 years, I've been engaged in this type of activity. And over that time, when you're speaking to audiences and trying to make a point in a sales training, you collect these useful fiction stories. And I've collected a bunch of them myself. And a few weeks ago, I thought it might be fun for me to start telling these stories to you, my friends, in a segment that I call Story Time with Paul B. And I got another good one tonight. This is a story I've told a bunch of times in my career. So I hope you enjoy it as well. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. Hey, yeah, come through, everybody come see. Story time with Paul B. Yeah. If entertainment is what you need, story time with Paul B. Yeah. Interesting, entertaining for sure. Stories for adults, parents to entrepreneurs. Got you laughing, you gonna have a good time. Still educational, this is what you want now. Come through, everybody come see. Story time with Paul B. Yeah. If entertainment is what you need, story time with Paul B. Let's go. I tell you, man, I like my greeting song, and I could not have done it on my own. I hired professionals to do it for me, and I like how it turned out. Tonight, I'm going to tell you the story of the two bedridden men, two elderly bedridden men in the hospital bed. Now, there was these two elderly men, and they were bedridden. That means they were going to spend the rest of their lives in that bed. They were sickly, and they couldn't use their legs and all that, so they were going to be in bed in that same hospital room. One of them, their bed was by the window, and the other one, their bed was by the door. Now, you're in a room stuck with this man for a long time. You guys end up friendly. And they had a little thing that he used to do. The man in the bed by the window, he used to, with the help of his bed, like raise the top part of his bed up and look out the window and tell his roommate what he saw. And apparently there was a little park down there. So the man in the bed by the door, he heard the stories of, and the park had a little pond in it too. He heard the stories of this father and son trying to float their boat on the little pond. He heard the stories of the young people courting in the little park. He heard stories of squirrels chasing each other around the trees that apparently was there. And that was pretty cool. He would just lay in his bed and listen to his roommate tell him what he saw out that window. Over time, he got this thought. You know what? It's not fair. He gets to look out the window, and I'm stuck here in this bed by the door. I don't get to see anything. He gets to see everything. It's just not fair. And he let that unfair thought fester in his head. He didn't have anybody to tell it to. He just didn't like it. So he developed an attitude towards the man who was looking out the window, telling his roommate what he saw, and which was their game. That's what they would do. And he kind of got angry at the situation. He even worked himself up into being angry at the man who had the privilege of looking out the windows while he couldn't. Nowadays we'd call that hating on him. Okay, he was hating on it because he'd get a chance to look out the window and he couldn't. One night, the man in the bed by the door was awakened by some violent coughing. He looked up and he saw that his roommate was coughing and thrashing, and he saw him really, really not doing well, and he made a choice. He could have called the nurses to come to that man's rescue, but because he had worked himself up into a dislike of that man, he chose a selfish act and chose not to help his friend. He just laid there and went back to sleep. The next morning, he was awakened by the nurses quietly wheeling the other man out of the room. And once he had wheeled his bed out of the room, he saw there was an empty space over there. And when the nurses were bringing the new bed in, he said to them, Nurse, why are you bringing that bed in? Could you move my bed over there by the window instead of here by the door? They had no problem. So they just moved his bed over there by the window and put the new bed where his bed had been. Soon as the nurses left, he used the bed to prop himself up, and with great difficulty, he used the bed's help and propped himself up with all the remaining strength he had. He was able to look out that window, and he saw the brick wall from the other part of the hospital. That's what he saw. See, the first man, he looked out that window and saw that brick wall, and he decided to tell his roommate about something pretty. He decided to tell him about a park instead of a brick wall. The second man, the man who is now in the bed by the window, who used to be in the bed by the door, he saw the brick wall, and he had to deal with his sadness forever. Now, I like the story a lot, and I use it a lot of times talking about whether we're going to choose to see what it is or choose to see what it can be. But I welcome you to find your own meaning in these stories. This has been Story Time with Paul B. I ask that if you found value in that story, please feel free to share it with anyone. Share it on your LinkedIn, share it on your Facebook, invite someone back. I'll be back here tomorrow night with another edition of Story Time with Paul B.
Hey, yeah, come through, everybody come see. Story time with Paul B. Yeah. If entertainment is what you need, story time with Paul B. Yeah. Interesting, entertaining for sure. Stories for adults, parents to entrepreneurs. Got you laughing, you gonna have a good time. Still educational, this is what you want now. Come through, everybody come see. Story time with Paul B.
Yeah.
If entertainment is what you need, story time with Paul B. Let's go.
Again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching these stories and sharing these stories. You have a beautiful rest of your evening.